Thank you so much. Thank you for the humble, kind introduction. My topic for the day is vitrectomy in retinal detachment. Can you hear? Can you see the slide?
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Is it gone to the next one?
yeah,
Okay. So my topic for today is vitrectomy in retinal detachment, its principles and techniques. So my presentation is essentially divided into three parts: indications, the principles, and the modern vitrectomy techniques. So indications, the most common is indication for treating a retinal detachment with vitrectomy would be PVR. As we saw, Dr. Nitin Prabhu Desai gave a fantastic talk on scleral buckle. Scleral buckle is always the first choice when you're dealing with a simple rhegmatogenous RD without PVR. But when it comes to PVR, you have essentially a disease vitreous which has to come out, and hence the choice has to be vitrectomy. In other cases where you have rhegmatogenous RD accompanying with other pathologies like, let's say, vitreous hemorrhage where there is no view, or with the intraocular foreign body which has to come out, or a giant retinal tear where you need to do vitrectomy and roll the giant retinal tear, or probably a drop nucleus or intraocular lens, then you would resort to vitrectomy for rhegmatogenous RD. uh, the another indication, because as advances happen, indications change. Now, although we always say that scleral buckle has its own charm, in the MIVS or the sutureless era, the need of the hour is early rehabilitation. So sometimes there might be situations where you have a rhegmatogenous RD without a PVR, but you could get away with vitrectomy, a sutureless vitrectomy, like for instance, a localized superior RD or a superior RD with a single break, or pseudophakic superior RD, because there you're not really worried about causing a cataract due to vitrectomy. So this debate could be endless. It could go for hours together, because you could be debating whether between a buckle and a vitrectomy. In fact, we have a talk on that later on in this course. But if you but the take on this is, if you can get away with a sutureless vitrectomy, maybe with a gas, because gas means it's a single surgery, you don't have to remove the gas, and early rehabilitation, then maybe that could score above a scleral buckling in such situations. So when we come to principles, how do what are the steps which are important when you're doing a vitrectomy in a rhegmatogenous RD? So the first and foremost important thing is the PVD induction. This is a must and has to be a part of every vitrectomy for rhegmatogenous RD. Nowadays, we use triamcinolone to stain the vitreous. And as you can see in this video, this is the Weiss's ring. The Weiss's ring is an indication that the PVD has occurred. Once the Weiss's ring occurs, then you can go on, with the vitrectomy. You could also use active or passive suction using a silicon tipped cannula to induce, because you have a mobile retina and you don't want to cause a nitrogenic break with a high suction from the vitreous cutter. You could also do a forceps assisted PVD induction. The most important principle is to do a complete vitrectomy. Now, why I've put complete in inverted commas is, you have to be yourself be satisfied at the end that you've done a complete vitrectomy. The rationale being that leaving residual vitreous is inviting PVR and hence recurrent RD. One must also try to excise as much of base as possible, because the base is the thickest part of the vitreous, which can lead to anterior PVR post-operatively. Base excision is more easier in aphakics and pseudophakics, and could be a challenge in phakics because you don't want to cause a lens touch. Base excision and complete vitrectomy could also be a challenge in pediatric and young RDs where the vitreous is thick and sometimes it's difficult to shave it completely. The next principle is making sure that the retina settles. So flattening and settling the retinal break is important at the end of fluid air exchange. If the retina is intrinsically contracted, then no matter how much membrane peeling and PVR you've removed, it does not settle. One of the indication of it not settling is you could be having a subretinal air. In that situation, then you may have to resort to relaxing retinotomy. One must remember that having a little bit of pocket of posterior residual SRF is not much of a concern, because if your brakes are flat, then that residual SRF will absorb consequentially in the post-operative period. Doing endolaser and cryopexy to all the brakes, the ones on the detached retina as well as on the attached retina, is very important before inserting the tamponade. Vitreous tamponades, again, we have Dr. Vatsal Parekh who's going to talk on vitreous tamponades. But just to make a mention here, PFCL is an important aspect of vitreous surgery for RD. It acts as a third surgical hand. It is very useful in tackling giant retinal tears. As you can see in this video, there's a giant retinal tear in a highly myopic patient. And after injecting the PFCL helps rolling the flap of the giant retinal tear. You can see I'm rolling the flap and using the PFCL to do that. And then at the end of the surgery, the PFCL also helps in silicone oil PFCL exchange, the last bubble of the PFCL being removed while the oil is being injected. Of course, post-op prone positioning becomes important when you're using tamponades for retinal detachment surgery. Another million-dollar question is whether to use a band or not. Again, this could be an endless debate. But the situations where I would use a band in retinal detachment with vitrectomy is when I'm not sure that I've achieved a complete vitrectomy. Probably I would use a band in young and pediatric retinal detachments, in phakic retinal detachments, those detachments there where there is a lot of PVR, and probably for inferior breaks, because inferior breaks will always have some SRF collecting around them. So in these situations, I would sort of use a band because that will be my insurance. Coming to the techniques, it's a huge topic to cover in a short time, but let's just look at the some of the aspects. The MIVS, or the minimally invasive vitreous surgery, the trocar cannula system has changed the game. It's been a game changer. This is a video from 2004 where I'm struggling to cut this vitreous which is spouting from a sclerotomy, a 20 gauge sclerotomy. And this particular action could cause iatrogenic breaks and retina incarcerating into the pore. Gone are those days, because by using the trocar cannula system, we are traversing the vitreous sufficiently enough to avoid these iatrogenic complications. Again, the valved trocar cannula system also protects from inadvertent hypotony, something which you don't want in myopic RDs. Again, the trocar cannula system also allows us to exchange our ports. You can always move the infusion cannula superiorly, go through the infratemporal cannula and do your shaving of the vitreous in the inferior fundus, thus avoiding lens touch. So these are some of the advantages of the modern MIVS vitrectomy which we do. The high-speed small gauge vitreous cutters again have made a lot of difference. The high cut rate, decreasing the surgical time, and there is safety from complications such as iatrogenic breaks because the suction on the retina is less. Again, the small gauge, the augmented tips are very easy because you can go as close to the retina and shave the vitreous as close as possible. Another important concept which some of the machines have introduced is that of duty cycle. The minimum duty cycle is a situation where you can have the same high cut rate, but the port is open for a lesser amount of time. This is just to depict. You can see this is a minimal cut rate on this side where the port is open for a lesser time as compared to here. So in this situation, you will have less amount of turbulence. You can see this. In this situation is less amount of turbulence, and this kind of less duty cycle can be used for shaving, going very close to the retina, whereas the high duty cycle is used when you're doing a core vitrectomy in the mid vitreous cavity. The other principles can't go much into details, but I just make few mentions. Better illumination, safer illumination sources such as the LED illumination, then chandeliers have made a lot of difference in the way we are now doing our vitreous surgery with excellent results. The wide angle viewing systems again have changed because we can really go to periphery, we can use a wide angle viewing systems and identify all the retinal breaks. Chromovitrectomy, where we use the triamcinolone to induce PVD, we are using brilliant blue to peel the ILM in those situations where there is a macular hole, have also changed the game. And better tamponades, we have now heavy silicone oils, we have Densiron. These help in the situations where there are multiple breaks in the inferior quadrants. And of course, better instrumentation. There are better forceps nowadays, better endocauteries. So all these things have helped us to improve our surgical results for vitrectomy in retinal detachment. So that is where I rest my case. Thank you.